All right, thank you, Nicole. I'm Dennis Olson, and I want to thank you all for your time here today. I've been with Extron for over 25 years now, and it's been interesting. I often look back at this last year and a half and wonder just where we would have been as an industry if unified communications were not part of our industry. And it's just amazing how much of a change this has made to our lives, as well as gotten us through some pretty tough spots. And what I want to talk to you about today is how Extron's Control will integrate in virtually everyone's unified communication. One of the things I really like to point out here is that we don't just work with one of the unified communication manufacturers. We work with mostly all. And the idea behind that is we're trying to add value into these systems to where we can really turn these, I guess you could say, communications environments or these soft codec environments into part of the traditional AV system. I know we collectively over the course of the last year and a half have all been sitting here doing these Zoom calls and these Teams calls. And as we move back into our conference rooms, boardrooms, things of that nature, we want to be able to seamlessly integrate these unified communication systems into our traditional AV systems so that we can really move forward and just have a nice cohesive system working and still have that user interface that everyone can be very comfortable with. So let me go ahead and get started in here. Some of the things that we look at with regards to the challenges of moving these UC systems into our normal AV environments is, first of all, accommodating different types of signals. How do we connect our laptop in? How do we get our signals in, whether it's a wired connection, whether it's a wireless connection? Certainly there are challenges that emerge from that. But then also a big area of this is how do we take advantage of the room control? In a lot of situations, we've seen unified communication systems sitting completely separate of the traditional AV environment. And our goal is to be able to make both of those work together so that we can control our lighting, we can control our HVAC system, we can control our displays, while at the same time taking advantage of the controls from within the call that we're doing. And then another big thing that we look at here is cable clutter. Certainly when we're dealing with a lot of these systems, we have to power our laptops, we have to power our devices. We also want to have a nice clean workstation there. So we'll talk about how we can accommodate getting rid of any kind of cable clutter that may arise from this as well. So there's a number of areas that we can kind of look at where we can add value in these systems. And that could be anywhere from dealing with the audio aspects of that, being able to integrate with the existing audio in the space, being able to provide cable management, room control, the AV control that we may have there. And in a lot of systems, room automation is becoming a really big thing. A lot of our users that we're seeing these days don't actually want to have physical contact with the system. They want the system to automatically go on when they enter the room. They want to be able to automatically present from their laptop just by plugging in a cable, or even in a wireless scenario, we could accommodate that. So there's a number of things that can be brought into the forefront from room automation, and then also bringing that into the scheduling aspects as well. There's a number of room scheduling accommodations that can be had, whether it's integrating with Microsoft Exchange or virtually any of the other scheduling servers that exist out there, that can be had here as well. So looking at integrating our UC systems into a traditional meeting room, there's a number of things that we have to consider. And we also have to kind of take a look at who are the players in this. And, we all know that over the course of the last year and a half or so, we've all been using Zoom. We've been using Teams. WebEx has been out there well beyond this starting. But it's not just integrating with these systems via the conferencing provider, but it is also dealing with the UC solution provider as well. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, we're all familiar with the UC platforms that exist. We're familiar with Teams, with Zoom, with Cisco, but it is the solution providers that also are bringing in a tremendous resource to these systems. And these are just a number of the manufacturers that we currently support: Logitech, Yealink, HP, Poly, as well as Lenovo. And there's many more that we're currently working with to provide that full integration of both the software in terms of the codec as well as the hardware to provide these solutions. So I want to kind of just dive through and show you a couple different types of solutions that we can provide on this along these lines. So when we take a look at the UC platforms, I'm going to start out here with a Teams room. Certainly when we look at Teams rooms, our focus traditionally has been going into the Teams app, launching the conference. But what we want to kind of deal with here is additional supported solutions that can be had. Many of you may use one of the providers that I had talked about recently, Logitech, all the way down through Yealink. And you may be using that as your hardware for the touchscreen or for the PC that's running that Teams application. But what we want to kind of dive into here is, how can we add a level of room control into these systems while still utilizing these platforms? And I want to kind of show you how Extron's approach works. You'll notice here on the lower right corner, we're identifying an Extron Control processor that's being used there. And with that control processor, we're able to bring to the forefront some additional control for things like the lighting, the AV devices that are part of this system, the shades, any other management of the system that we need. And I want to kind of show you what the user interface might look like. Because in this scenario, we're talking about the Microsoft Teams room touchscreen. And if I zoom in on that a little bit, you'll notice that we're going to actually have control or access for our control from that very same page. So if we look at that, you'll notice that in the lower right corner, there's just a little control toolbar that gets added onto that screen. So the call user interface is going to be exactly the same as it has always been, directly through that Teams application. But in this regard, when we go ahead and we click on that little link right there, that will open up the room control options. Part of what we do at Extron is we build graphical user interface templates, and we're using the same exact layout of these Teams rooms. We're also going to talk about Zoom in just a little bit, in the fact that we do the same thing with those Zoom rooms. But in this regard, this page now mirrors the normal Teams look, and we'll have our room controls. So of course, when we go into that room controls, you'll notice we'll have a page for display controls. So of course, that control processor has generated this page, so we can use that for any kind of display switching that we may need. If we click the next button, you'll notice we can switch back and forth between those sources on the display. We can provide lighting control integration here. So of course, you could have your lighting presets and things of that nature that could be brought up from that same user interface. We could have our shades control. And then even in this scenario, we could provide camera control. In just a few moments, I'll talk to you about the fact that at Extron, we are creating a number of USB camera drivers for our control systems as well. And this is a key element here, because not only can we take advantage of this in our Zoom or Teams calls, but we can also take advantage of that in our traditional AV systems as well. And I'll show you how that functions. But you'll notice all of this is happening from the control processor over here in the lower right corner with regards to those controls. Once we go ahead and close out that room control page, you'll notice that we're back into our normal user interface that we would have for that Teams room. And that's just one of the kind of the highlights of what we can do within the Teams. And I'll show you in a little bit some of the platforms that can be accommodated there. If we take a look at Zoom, there's a number of ways that we can integrate with these Zoom rooms as well. And this could be something from the very basic a Zoom room where there is what's called a JSON file where we can upload that into what's called Zoom native rooms. But then also we would have the ability of integrating full Extron control with these rooms as well. And I'll kind of show you that as we continue on. So if we think about some of these rooms where I'm doing just basic native room control, again, any one of the hardware providers that we had talked about, we could be using their system as the primary user interface into the system. But then with the Zoom native room control, we can provide some very basic Ethernet-based control of devices. Or what we could do is using an Extron touch panel as the primary user interface for these systems. We could have the full bidirectional control going on inside of there. And it does bring up a whole host of new capabilities within these spaces. And we'll kind of take a look at a few different applications here. This is what's referred to as a Zoom native room. And in this room, you'll notice that this is dealing with a Poly Studio X30 as the primary PC that's running that Zoom app. The user interface is a Poly TC8, but in this environment, there's very limited UI customization that I can do because I'm relying on that Poly's primary user interface on that screen. But what we can bring to the forefront here is you'll notice by adding an Extron Control processor, we're going to have the ability of sending Ethernet-based commands in. Now, I will point out, this is only going to be unidirectional commands, so we won't be able to get feedback from these, but we can add in additional levels of AV control in this regard. And again, this is referred to as a Zoom native room control. So very basic with regards to what's being brought in the integration there. When we take a look at a fully integrated AV system with Zoom control, what we do here is we actually create global configurator. That's our configuration approach for our control products. We create fully customizable templates for this. What I mean by those fully customizable templates is that we can create whatever type of pages, whatever type of user interface we want, still maintaining that traditional Zoom layout. But then having the full control in this regard, what I could do is I could go to those additional pages, have custom buttons, full feedback on any of the devices that are going on inside of there. So it could be for my displays, my switching, any other integration portions of that, or even the automation features could all come up into play on that. But again, you'll notice that this application, we're using an Extron touch panel. So here we have an Extron touch panel being utilized, an Extron control processor. We're doing switching of other sources coming into there as well. And again, now we're just using a PC running that Zoom room. So this one is fully integrated where we can have any kind of customization that we desire. Again, on the Zoom, there are a lot of different avenues that we can take. Systems could be very basic from the perspective of just having, the Zoom app running on a tablet. It could be the Zoom app running on any one of these hardware solutions that we show here in the center, or it could be a fully integrated control interface with regards to that Zoom where we're utilizing Extron control processor and touch panel in conjunction with that. So a number of different ways that we could look at this. So I want to kind of show you a little bit more about these solution providers that I'd mentioned, because in a lot of these systems right now, we're seeing a number of different system providers that are out there where we may not be putting a full-blown Extron control system in there. Maybe we're using a system primarily with Logitech hardware, or maybe we're using Poly hardware or Lenovo or things like that. In a lot of these systems, we might just be doing more of a value add. And what I mean by that is adding additional things. So again, we're getting rid of that clutter in the system. Maybe we're adding some additional controls and functions within our system. So this is a situation where, again, we're not really focusing too much on the hardware per se, because this could be any one of these conference rooms that we're looking at. But in this scenario, you'll notice that what we're doing to provide additional value is here we have a cable cubby, cable management, where we can provide USB charging for our mobile devices, things of that nature. But then this is also kind of a unique thing that we're doing right now. It's called a USB-C HD 101. And in a nutshell, what it will do is if you think about a lot of our current laptops that we're getting, those laptops are being utilized with USB-C type connectors. We're using that USB-C connector to provide the power for our laptop, as well as to provide a video output from the laptop. And that's what this USB-C HD 101 will actually do, is it will provide the power so that the laptop can charge while it's connected to this, but at the same time, will extract the HDMI signal off of that USB-C and allow that to be part of the input to the system. So again, in this system, we're just doing really more of a value add to that system and not providing any control whatsoever. This next system, in a lot of these situations, when we're integrating the UC system into larger applications, we may need to do additional input switching to our system. And with that input switching, what we're dealing with here, we're showing an external video switch. Now, this is a switcher and scaler combination, but it'll allow us the ability of accommodating, again, that USB-C, the HDMI content, display port, as well as those old analog signals at the same time. So of course, we can accommodate virtually any type of source coming into that system from that perspective. Another application that we look at here is maybe we're expanding on that room control. And again, I've already talked about this at the front end of this presentation, but by adding a control processor into a lot of these existing rooms, what we can do is we can leverage the capability of providing that AV device control, doing HVAC, lighting control, other things of that nature, or potentially just doing the automation. So there's a number of things on the automation that we can bring to the forefront so that that particular user doesn't even have to press any of the buttons on the system itself to be able to get everything up and running. Another one that we look at, and this is kind of becoming a little bit more commonplace, is we're dealing with a system here where although we have the hardware providers here that are connected in, and we have, we'll say, a house Microsoft Teams room or something of that nature, when we get individuals that are coming into that space with their own laptop, and with their own laptop, they may be running any conferencing software that they have on that laptop. They want to be able to get that laptop signal brought into the system seamlessly, and we can accommodate that as well. But in this scenario, what we're doing is we're highlighting USB switching. If you think about it, with those laptops or with those other applications coming in to utilize the conferencing system, they have to get their camera information and their audio information off of that laptop in addition to the video. So what we're doing is you'll notice that in conjunction with a control processor and a USB switcher, we're able to seamlessly switch between the USB content from this Microsoft Teams room or that laptop coming in. So now we could facilitate that meeting with either one of those solutions. So it does, I was watching earlier that somebody had a question regarding being able to integrate seamlessly with other types of applications. This is one of the ways that we can get those, maybe it's not a Zoom call or a Teams call at all. We could accommodate that in that regard. Now, another big thing that's coming up these days is we're seeing a lot of these Zoom and Teams rooms where camera control becomes very, very important. And this is something that we've recently announced as well, where in this application, what we're showing is one of the newer ceiling array microphones being used. And that ceiling array microphone can actually pick up where the audio is coming from and relay that out via control. So you'll notice that on this particular system, what we're doing is via the Dante network, we're bringing those coordinates of where the audio was picked up into a DSP processor, which is also now in turn communicating to the control processor, and it's giving us camera control. So the idea behind this is that as an individual in this space talks, the camera will automatically follow wherever the voice is coming from. And that becomes a very handy thing. So of course, now you can really zoom in and get the attention of the one person that's talking at that time. So again, this will work with any of the conferencing solutions. It is a camera control that is working in conjunction with Extron Control processors. So you'll notice we can provide camera control to a number of different manufacturers out there right now. And these are drivers that we currently have on our Extron website that can be used in conjunction with our control systems. And we certify these cameras as well. We will work with some of the generic USB pan and tilt cameras as well. So this has been a very big thing for us over the recent months. Another thing that we can do with regards to camera, and this is actually something that we had well before we went into this lockdown over the last 18 months, is if users have an HDMI camera, we'll say a legacy HDMI camera that they want to use, and they want to integrate that with their UC system, what we can do here is we have a device called a MediaPort 200. And what this thing will do is it'll take the HDMI feed, it'll take that HDMI feed directly off of a PTZ camera, bring that in, and it will convert that over to USB. And now that USB can go into, again, any one of those software codec PCs being utilized for that, so that we can now have the video from those cameras as well. And then, of course, a lot of those HDMI PTZ cameras, we have already had drivers for the control aspect of those over the years as well. We talk about wireless presentations. This is yet another thing that we can accommodate here, where we've had this for quite a while, called our ShareLink Pro, where we can actually have the HDMI feed from, wired content as well as wireless content. And part of what we can do here, we can accommodate both guest as well as corporate LAN simultaneously. And then another thing that we can do with this type of wireless solution is provide integration with wireless devices, mobile devices, through Miracast support as well. So that's an optional adapter that can be added on this device to accommodate that. And then the last thing I want to share with you here is a USB signal extension. And a USB signal extension has become a very big part of what we do. Certainly when we're looking at some of these larger conference rooms, larger spaces, these USB signals may have to run a very long distance. And part of that challenge, of course, is understanding that with USB 2.0, its maximum distance is about 16 feet, where with the newer high-speed USB 3.2, we're down in about that 10-foot range. And quite often, we need to be able to extend these signals out a very long length. So with situations like this, through signal extension on the HDMI side, we could do that either through transmitters and receivers in a twisted pair environment, or much like we're showing right here, we actually have a, we call it a flexible optical high-speed HDMI cable, where we could accommodate HDMI lengths up to 300 feet. But then more importantly, on the USB side, we can do USB signal extension of 5 gig USB with an optical extension cable up to 65 feet. But then also we can accommodate that through another device called a UCS 900, which is a fiber optic solution that can give us up to 492 feet for the USB extension. And again, both of these high-speed USB extenders will accommodate the 5 gig USB. We will also do the 2.0. We are working towards some high-speed USB switching as well, because that's another big thing that a lot of individuals want to be able to do moving forward in this area. So, certainly when we look at these UC systems, there's a number of different values we can provide, everything from room control to management and analytics. We can do the audio, the video, cable management, any number of things from that perspective. And then the last thing I want to share with you is that we have devoted a portion of the Extron website specifically towards unified communications. And any of you are welcome to go there. We have all of our tools and resources outlined. We've created full design guides on each one of the integrations that we have. And certainly you can learn a lot more on those from that perspective. So there we go. Do we have any questions? Looks like we have a few questions out there.
We have many, many questions, Dennis, and I'm going to go through them quickly because I want to have time for our giveaway. Dennis, does Extron have a Zoom client control for a room?
A Zoom client control for a room. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Is there Zoom client room control on any Extron products?
Would have not specifically the Zoom client per se, but what we'll do is we'll integrate with those rooms in either the Zoom native environments or in a full control, where what we're doing is we're adding that to the Zoom rooms and they're still running on their own platform.
Great.
I hope I get that.
Does Extron have a USB 3.0 over Ethernet for longer cable runs?
Over Ethernet. At this point, the USB extender is going to be only over that fiber solution, and that's just under 500 feet.
Hey,
Great.
Jenke, hold on. Let me mute this.
Can the Teams rooms, Zoom room controls be customized in the GC Pro, or do we need to use your supplied templates?
They can be the templates. That's a very good thing. Sarah, thank you for that. We create templates that are fully customizable. That's the idea behind this, is that we do not restrict the pages or the graphics on any of those pages.
Does Extron have USB 3.0 over internet for longer cable runs?
I think that's similar to our previous question. That is just going to be in, we have it as a hybrid optical cable as well as over a fiber solution at this point.
Will SW2 USB switchers allow for USB 3.0 input in the future?
We are working towards that.
Are there plans for a new DVS with more HDMI inputs and less VGA?
Actually, any of our current introductions that we're creating are going away from VGA entirely. So that is a focus that we're looking at.
Will we be able to get copies of the deck you are presenting?
I could probably get you graphics if you get me an email address.
Can you touch on Extron's voice lift technology?
Extron's voice lift technology is an RF-based microphone solution that will communicate directly into a number of our switchers. And it's in the amount of time I have allotted, I'd probably be better off to bring that up in a private email, or we could send some information over to, it looks like Andrew Beckman.
Great. When will the new USB extender start shipping?
Rob, are you here?
Yeah. Which ones are we referring to?
It was just the USB extenders. All
So
they
we've-
said. I apologize.
Yeah, our USB extenders that Dennis mentioned, the UCS 900 is currently shipping. If there's another one, we could get some information on that if I've got a part number.
I believe that would be the hybrid cable.